This horrifying family massacre eventually shocked detectives. The case, however, turned from a family get-together celebration to a family massacre, leaving the investigators confused and emotionally devastated by the tragic turn of events. On the other hand, what appeared to be a fire-related occurrence at first was actually a horrifying discovery. What really happened, and who had murdered this family? Keep watching till the end as we unravel these mysteries. This is Unsolved Files, a place where crime stories are being brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more fascinating and suspense-filled crime stories. Now, let's get back into this story and uncover this mystery. Brian Taba Harvey, who was a singer and also a songwriter for the underground indie band House of Freaks in the 1980s, became well known in the community. Despite having parted ways professionally with his musical collaborator Johnny Hott in the 1990s, they remained close friends. Devoted to his craft, Brian performed one more time on New Year's Eve, which turned out to be, regretfully and without his knowledge, his last night on Earth. On the other hand, 39-year-old Catherine Elizabeth Grabinski, a cornerstone of the community, was successful as co-owner of the well-known toy business World of Mirth, which is situated in Richmond's Carytown neighborhood. She was an artist who worked in a variety of fields, including pastry cooking, waitressing, and painting sets for community theater. In addition to being a half-sister to actor Stephen Culp, who is well known for his performances in the television series The West Wing and Desperate Housewives, among other movies, Kathy had an older sister named Shelley Grabinski. At the Border Cafe on Main Street, where Catherine worked, Brian frequently went to see Johnny. Brian and Catherine's paths eventually crossed. They were married in 1990, and the House of Freaks put out an album including a song called I Got Happy as an expression of appreciation to Catherine. The couple had two daughters. Stellar Ann, their first daughter, was born in 1996. Thoughts on becoming a father? Brian said on a fan page, "Since the birth of my daughter, I believe I've gotten pretty close to understanding why I'm here on Earth. I believe that having optimism for the future is essential. You owe it to your children." Ruby May, their second daughter, was born in 2001. In addition to pursuing his musical career, Brian started working as a computer technician for the Henry County school system. Meanwhile, Catherine took the entrepreneurial route and opened Mirror, a distinctive gift and toy shop that rose in popularity in the elegant Carytown neighborhood. Stephen Culp, her brother, clarified in court that she intended to build a place where parents could come with their children and spend time, and where the children could play with the toys. There are no weapons or other potentially dangerous objects there. It was an amazing location. The Harveys settled in a beautiful old neighborhood with porch swings, big trees, and an ivy-covered exterior on Richmond's south side. On the lower level of their two-story red brick home, they had a family room. Everyone in Richmond believed that the lovely family was well-liked and well-known, and that no one truly had evil intentions towards them. On Sunday, January 1st, 2006, Brian, his spouse Catherine, and their two kids, Ruby, age 4, and Stella, age 9, looked forward to a busy day. They had gotten up early to get ready for the celebrations because, it seemed, they were having a lunchtime barbecue for friends and family. It was a custom for them to throw a party on New Year's Day each year, inviting all of their close friends. However, Brian went outside his residence in Richmond, Virginia's upscale Woodland Heights neighborhood, on a Sunday morning to get the newspaper. After collecting the newspaper, he came back inside without locking the door, although this wouldn't typically have been a problem because they lived in a safe neighborhood. And on party days, they usually left the door open for people to arrive and didn't lock it. But on this fateful day, Brian had no idea that opportunistic criminals were quietly waiting around. In the kitchen, Catherine was working hard to prepare cookies for the guests that would be arriving soon. Suddenly, she thought someone had arrived earlier than intended since she heard conversations coming from the living room. To her dismay, when she got closer, she saw two unidentified men instead of familiar ones. During the fearful moments that followed, Brian, Catherine, and little Ruby were led downstairs to the basement playroom. Stella hadn't arrived yet. She'd been at a sleepover the night before. After confining the family in the small area, the trespassers bound them with packing tape and electrical lines, promising that if they cooperated, nothing bad would happen to them. At about 10 in the morning, as they were robbing the house, there was a knock on the front door. Catherine was freed from her bindings by the group's apparent leader, who also gave her instructions to handle the person at the door. But before he let her go, he gave her a harsh warning that her daughter and her spouse would be killed if she went for rescue or tried to flee. With Stella on the way, Catherine was in a tough situation. Answering the door would put her daughter in danger along with the rest of the family, but ignoring the banging may mean facing the sealant's fury, who was obviously in a stronger position. She finally decided that it would be prudent to cooperate, and by doing so, she opened the door. Stella abruptly changed the course of events by darting past Catherine and into the playroom, where the family generally spent a lot of time together. Catherine moved fast to stop her daughter's friend from following by grabbing her. Kieran Perkinson, the friend's mother, later recalled how surprised she was by Catherine's unusual behavior, which contrasted with her customary joy. When Perkinson asks Catherine how she's doing, she normally responds that she's not feeling well. She ended the talk abruptly and closed the door, making a circular motion to the side of her head that looked like a rifle or something. Later, Perkinson became concerned about this strange gesture, wondering what Catherine was trying to say. Were spies keeping an eye on Catherine? Would she have tried to get away, maybe rescuing Stella and herself? But leaving Brian and Ruby behind was a difficult decision for Catherine. Perkinson left, saying he would be back for the celebration later. Catherine went back to the basement after the 4 Harveys had entered the house and found Stella, who had been safely restrained with the rest of the family, looking terrified. Chaos broke out as everyone lay helpless and shackled. Unexpectedly, without prior notice, the man in charge showed a knife that he had taken from Harvey's kitchen and started cutting the throats of everyone, even the small girls. In an attempt to make them die sooner, he gave his accomplice the order to bash their heads. When the partner resisted, the attacker took a claw hammer and mercilessly hit them until they stopped moving. Now that was indeed brutal. Was this a robbery attack or an assassination? The man lit the room on fire after taking off Catherine Harvey's wedding band, using wine as a detonator to hide any proof of their horrible deeds. They grabbed a laptop, a DVD player, and several other items as they fled the house, enjoying a dish of freshly baked cookies that were cooling on the kitchen counter. They dashed outside and got into the getaway car, a woman in a relationship with one of the men acting as a lookout during what was initially planned to be a straightforward robbery was found inside the getaway car. They moved quickly on, disappearing from the scene as quietly as they had appeared. Later, Johnny Hott showed up for the festivities at about 1:30 p.m. When he opened the front door, a billowing cloud of smoke shot out. The strong smell of burning scared the neighbors, who immediately called 911. 4 victims were found in the smoldering intact basement as emergency personnel entered the building to put out the fire. When a more sinister cause of death was discovered, investigators at the site quickly concluded that the fire was not the cause of their deaths. As a result, the investigation into the fire has turned into a murder inquiry. Even still, several police officers and paramedics, who were used to seeing the worst sides of humanity, were said to have found the horrific picture so disturbing that they started crying out loud. It was heartbreaking to learn that the parents had been forced to see their kids suffer horribly, and vice versa. According to autopsies, blunt force injuries to the head were the cause of death for both Brian and Catherine. Despite her severe injuries, Stella may have been alive when the fire started, but because of her mix of blunt force trauma and smoke inhalation, it ultimately led to her terrible death. In addition, Ruby was stabbed in the back and neck. Although the authorities launched an instant investigation into the killings, they lacked substantial proof. They called on the public for help, since they knew that information would be useful to them, and luckily, their breakthrough arrived a few days later. Latoya Polly, a woman, called the police on January 6th and asked them to look into the welfare of her 21-year-old friend, Ashley Baskerville Tucker. Polly voiced her worries because she thought Ashley, her boyfriend Ray Joseph Dandridge, who was 29, and his uncle Ricky Treva Gray, who was also of the same age as Ray, were all involved in the murder of the Harvey family. It was stated that Ricky, who was a few months younger than his nephew, was the one in control. Polly revealed that the 2 men had concealed proof of their crimes in her home, which was another startling revelation. She disclosed that Harvey's picture was the wallpaper on the laptop that Gray and Dandridge had brought with them when they had recently visited her. By then, there was no question that the laptop belonged to them because the Harvey case was attracting a lot of media attention. Latoya also revealed detailed information regarding a plan Ashley, Gray, and Dandridge had made to steal Ashley's parents. To paint Ashley as innocent, Ashley was meant to play the role of a hostage, enabling Ricky and Gray to demand money from the Baskerville Tuckers. Even though she was offered a part and knew the whole scheme, Latoya turned it down because she felt uneasy about the 3 of them. Hours later, just the uncle and nephew came back, and they secretly said that Ashley was gone when asked where she had gone. Latoya became even more concerned after hearing this comment, and she called the police. Investigators required this vital information to begin making connections. After verifying LaToya's information, detectives went to the house where Ashley lived with her mother. Upon entering the house, the investigators were horrified to see yet another awful scene. The bodies of 46-year-old Mary Baskerville Tucker and 55-year-old Percy L. Tucker, her stepfather, were found. All three victims' lifeless bodies were brutally treated, like what happened to the Harvey family. The victims had their throats slit ruthlessly, were chained, and were gagged. Mary and Percy L., who both had severe neck injuries, suffered more agony when duct tape was wrapped tightly around their heads. But Percy L. ended up with a sock shoved down his neck, and Ashley was discovered to have been suffocated by a plastic bag. Suffocation and torture were found to be the common causes of death for all three. Furthermore, law enforcement organizations from all over the region worked together in an attempt to capture the thrill murderer before they could carry out any additional crimes, as they were suspected of doing. Percy L. and Mary, like Harvey, led peaceful lives free of enemies. Percy L. worked as a forklift operator, and Mary was a housekeeper. The betrayal of their daughter ended the peaceful existence of an innocent couple who wanted to enjoy their golden years devastatingly. The detectives quickly discovered the vital connection between Tucker's and Harvey's. The wedding band that had been removed from Catherine Harvey and reported lost was discovered on Ashley's finger. After learning of this, it became necessary to move quickly to capture Gray and Dandridge before they could cause any more irreversible damage. On January 7th, after tracking their whereabouts back to Pennsylvania, Gray and Dandridge were arrested in Philadelphia. Dandridge said during his interrogation that his uncle had planned the killings and that he had only carried out his instructions. When confronted with these incriminating allegations, Gray quickly acknowledged that he had killed Harvey and that he had also killed Ashley's parents. These uncomplicated admissions were enough to shock anyone, but it soon became clear that this was only the beginning. Gray emphasized that the two families' acts were motivated only by the need for money by providing graphic details of their atrocities. Unknowingly to everyone, he was under the influence of PCP during the Harvey family murders. Phenylcyclohexylpiperidine, or PCP, is a substance that reportedly causes aggressive behavior in addition to auditory and visual hallucinations. Gray's expression remained cold and lifeless throughout his confession. Investigators thought they were confronting the devil in human form because of his complete lack of concern for the deaths he took. Additionally, it was disclosed that Gray was the one who killed Treva Terrell Gray, his wife, whose body was found in a shallow grave on Brookside Avenue in Washington, Pennsylvania. Before her terrible death, the couple had been married for 6 months and lived with Gray's nephew in an apartment owned by Treva's family. Treva's parents claim that Gray and his wife would often fight angrily. On the day Trevor's death was discovered, claw marks were even detected on Ricky's forearm. Gray and Dandridge were interviewed by Washington police, but at first, they were not treated as suspects. But according to Treva's mother, Mona Squires, the police believed Treva had overdosed on drugs, which prompted a protracted investigation into her death. Even though Treva's death was considered suspicious at the time, Gray's confession in 2006 was the catalyst for the start of the homicide inquiry. Ricky Gray was charged with 5 counts of capital murder on February 9, 2006, whereas Ray Dandridge was arrested on 3 counts of homicide in connection with the Baskerville Tucker shootings. Despite their previous admissions, both defendants entered not guilty pleas. The jury found Gray guilty on all counts following a 6-month trial, resulting in a life sentence for the homicides of Brian and Catherine Harvey. As a result of the heinous murders that occurred to Stella and Ruby, the court determined that the imposition of the death penalty was warranted. After learning of his uncle's conviction and the outcome of his case in September 2006, Dandridge chose to accept a plea bargain to escape being executed. He was given a life sentence without the chance of release. Meanwhile, Ricky Gray was charged by Culpeper County in December 2006 for the murder of a 37-year-old mother of 3 and legal assistant, Cheryl Warner. But Warner was found in the basement of her burning Reaver home, shot and hanging by an electrical cord. Gray entered a plea of not guilty. Nevertheless, contradictory evidence led to the charge's suspension on June 4, 2008. Gray's solicitors filed multiple appeals over the next 9 years, mainly claiming that their client's impaired capacity was caused by abuse during their early years. After the lawsuit made it to the Supreme Court, it was summarily dismissed in 2016. Gray was supposed to be executed on January 18, 2017, but that was set for November 2016. After exhausting all of his appeals, Ricky Gray received a lethal injection that day at the Greenville Correctional Facility. On the other hand, Ray Dandridge is still imprisoned at Sussex II State Prison. More than 1,400 people attended the Harvey family's funeral ceremony to offer their sorrow and sympathies after their horrible murders, unleashing an incredible wave of anguish and sadness. Dolls and flowers piled up in front of Catherine's business, creating a moving homage. Children arranged candles along the curb outside the red brick house, and they stayed lit for weeks. Culp, Catherine's brother, spoke on the horrific impact of the murders, describing them as a lightning bolt to the heart that felt bottomless. Despite this, a neighbor remarked on the community's collective grieving, saying, "We kept those candles burning for weeks." He continued, saying, "You know we owe it to them and their spirit. We are all trying to get past this. It kills me to think about their last hours." In Richmond's Forest Hill Park, a granite memorial to the Harvey family is placed atop an entrance footbridge. This family's life was brutally and unexpectedly cut short at the site, where they had previously had many happy times. But before the unfathomable evil entered their lives and destroyed all in its path, a bronze plaque portraying their beaming smiles honored those better times. The fact that these monsters faced every victim is regrettable and depressing. What do you think of the victims whose lives were brutally cut short and the loved ones they left behind? As we consider this heartbreaking, let us know in the comment section below. A man killed someone and kept the body in a trash bag. What's your take on that? Well, don't answer that. Check that out in our previous video, Heartbreaking Murder of Corey Desmond, Vertical Bar True Crime Documentary.